changing gears and moving into our second to the last part of this big giant chapter. So what we have left to look at is this section, the Byzantine and the Crusades, and then our last is the plague and the 100 Years' War. So those are our last things that we're looking at that are in this gigantic chapter. And section 4 is the Byzantine Empire and the Crusades. The Byzantine Empire is really the Eastern Roman Empire that has Constantinople. And today we're going to look at the important ruler of that empire, Justinian, and how he sets up his empire and this important transformation of this city, Constantinople, that we'll look at. So Justinian takes over the Eastern Roman Empire, and he takes that over and it starts to flourish. So really when we talk about the Byzantines, it really is the Roman Empire. And the historians call it a different name so we can distinguish between the Romans and Justinian, but it's really the same and in the same place. Is that sharp enough? So he becomes the emperor of the Eastern Roman Empire. And he gives us what you guys are going to look at today and tomorrow, the codification of Roman law, the body of civil law. And hopefully through this course so far, you can see that there's great significance placed on leaders that write down laws. And the significance of that historically is it gives civilization this ability to grow and expand under a law that guarantees the protection of certain people and changes us from this uncivilized group to a civilized law and order civilization. It becomes the legal basis for almost all of Europe, even though Justinian is writing this in what is now modern day Turkey. So for those of you that can get mental maps, this is Constantinople is Istanbul, which is in Turkey. And I will, in a second, draw a quick little map. So the Eastern Roman Empire to the Byzantine, again, we have very familiar problems. Justinian's conquest left the Eastern Roman Empire in serious trouble. Too much territory, too much money, population is declining due to the plague, and we will look at that. The plague hits Justinian's empire horrifically first. Lots of books written on the plague. One very important one's called Justinian's Flea, right? We know that the plague is spread by fleas on rats, and this idea of these fleas starting in this empire. And the population is going to decline to the plague, threats from invaders, and that will be Islam. And again, if you know anything about Istanbul and Turkey, it is an Islamic nation. So really quickly, just so that for the sake of understanding a little bit, Turkey, Istanbul, and Constantinople are in this little place, Black Sea. And this is Turkey, and this is Europe. So this is water. So Constantinople is really this city that's on the border of both Europe and Asia, and that's the way that this city is viewed in even modern times. Turkey in the 21st century is an Islamic secular nation. It doesn't base its laws on the Quran as of yet. And this is a very cosmopolitan city. It's a city that has a lot of different influences. And what we're going to look at this the city Constantinople, how its power is going to grow because of where it's at. So, sorry about that. But it is important to, I think, know where that city is. So there's a lot of problems in Constantinople. Justinian is defeated in a battle. He's going to lose all of Syria and Palestine. And by the end of the 8th century, the Eastern Roman Empire is reduced. And so now historians call this the Byzantine Empire. And the Byzantine Empire is both Christian and Greek. Greek becomes its official language, and Eastern Orthodox becomes the official church. So we have this switch and this change from it being Roman into being, again, more Greek. So we lose the Roman Catholic Church and change to the Eastern Orthodox Church. We change from this being a Roman-centered to it being a Greek-centered. And that, again, will cause a dramatic change. And so historians change the name of that little place formerly known as the Eastern Roman Empire into the Byzantine Empire. And Justinian, again, will be a big part of that change. And I'll come back if you guys need me to come back to this one. So the emperor's power was absolute because he was chosen by God. So there is no checks and balance on this emperor. He has control over the church. And that is a change in what we've seen in emperors and kings in Europe. They don't control the church. The Pope is still in charge. But in the Byzantine Empire, the emperor controls both the country and the church. And that is a tremendous amount of power. He appoints the head of the church as the patriarch. And the Byzantines believed that God had commanded their state to preserve the true Christian faith. And this is where we're going to find our next date, 1054. Because now we have a problem. We have two different churches saying that they are the one true faith. So the Roman Catholic Church, centered in Rome, is saying they are the one true faith, and the Eastern Orthodox Church in Constantinople is also saying they are the one true faith. So our next slide takes us actually to Constantinople. So what was life like in Constantinople? Constantinople is the largest city during the Middle Ages, the biggest one, bigger than Paris, bigger than London, bigger than any place in Europe. It is the largest city. It is, again, that connection between European goods and Asian goods. And most importantly, this Asian good that everyone wants is silk. China had protected the making of silk as a way to control their commodity. Silk is made out of silkworms who only eat mulberry leaves. And there's this process that when they spin their little, what's it called, a chrysalis, I think, and you drop it in boiling water and get the silk. And silk is highly desirable. Silk is still a product in the 21st century that is still fairly expensive. You know instantly the difference between real silk and the silk that you guys can buy just about everywhere else. Because number one, it costs a whole lot more than that silk robe you buy at Walmart, and it feels a whole lot different. If you've ever felt real silk, there's not a doubt like, oh, is this real or is this fake? It is a highly desirable product. And China protected that. They protected the silkworm, the process. Justinian smuggles out some of those silkworms and then begins to create silk and makes his city incredibly wealthy as a result of that. He built the Hagia Sophia, which is the Church of Holy Wisdom. It is a gigantic beautiful cathedral, which is still in Istanbul. In, I think, the 15th century, moves from a Christian cathedral into a mosque, and used by the faith of Islam. And probably around the 19th century, it was changed into a museum so that it wasn't used as a church any longer. I just think I heard this on NPR about 3 weeks ago, that there is now a push back in Turkey to revert it back to both its original intent as a cathedral for Christianity, Catholicism, and as a mosque. And I think that's the unique place that's Turkey, that it coexists with both of those two faiths. But I'm not sure if I heard that correctly when I was listening to that. So Justinian builds this beautiful cathedral. It's still standing, and if any of you ever get to Istanbul, it's definitely a very striking part of that world. And again, Justinian builds this with what we will see in our next set of chapters in the Renaissance with mathematics. He uses engineering principles to build this beautiful Hagia Sophia. Our last little look today will be at our date 1054. The Byzantine Empire is troubled by the split between the Eastern Orthodox and Roman Catholic Church. The Eastern Orthodox said, "We are not accepting your Pope as the head of our church. We don't accept him. We like this other guy even better." So in 1054, we have our first real split in our one church. And now we're going to be two churches. We are going to be now what's known as the Roman Catholic Church and the Eastern Orthodox Church. And it is called the Great Schism. A schism is a split, like in a rock. It still exists today. Both of these branches, the Eastern Orthodox, the one true faith, the Roman Catholic, the one true faith, they still send out advertisements to each other like, "Come back to our church, we're the right one." Eastern Orthodox is still saying, "Nope, it's us." It is a schism that is greatly reduced than what it was in 1054. But it is our first separation of the faith of Christianity. And it's not a schism based on any kind of different belief system in the sacred text or in the sacraments or any of those things, or communion. It's who gets to be the leader, which is a different break that we'll see when we get to the 16th century with Martin Luther. Martin Luther's disagreement with the Catholic Church is going to be a whole lot of stuff that has to do with the belief system of the Catholic Church. This is just who gets to be in charge. And so that is your next to the last date that you need. We'll get our other one on Thursday when we move to the Crusades. All right, so questions about any of that? Your reading is about Justinian's laws and answering questions about the stuff that he writes. It is your also Wednesday assignment. So again, however you prefer to do that, get it done today in the last 20, 30 minutes of class, which is easily done, and have nothing to do tomorrow for this class, or relax today and do it at home. Your prerogative. It is due tomorrow, though, by 11:59. So please make sure you look at that and get that finished by Wednesday, 11:59. All right, questions, anyone?
It's on Cami.
I'm sorry?
The assignment is on Cami.
Yes, it is. Mm-hmm.